Hi everyone, my name is Brandon Hall. I chose the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 for my assignment number 4. As we move on here, the history, of course it was enacted in 1973 on September 26th by a man named John Bodemus. It replaced the Vocational Rehabilitation Act. It looked to expand special federal responsibilities, research and training possibilities for individuals who are disabled in welfare, education, and Secretary of Health. So basically it outlined a few titles and sections in the civil rights laws involving legal rights for those with disabilities. So Title I, Vocational Rehabilitation and Rehabilitation Services Agency, as I stated, I'll read it real quick. Vocational rehabilitation services help eligible persons with disabilities pursue post-secondary education, employment, and independent living. Services could include counseling, medical and psychological services, job training, and other services based on the needs of individuals. State vocational rehabilitation services programs are funded and overseen by the Federal Rehabilitation Services Administration. As we move on, you can tell that that was very vague, and what this Rehabilitation Act of 1973 it looked to kind of expand, like I said, and kind of make the title and sections more accommodative for individuals with less loopholes. So Section 501, Federal Employment, under Title V, Rights and Advocacy. This basically requires the federal government to practice affirmative action in hiring and promoting workers with disabilities. So giving the right for individuals with disabilities to be hired by organizations. Also under Title V, Rights and Advocacy, we have Section 502, establish the Access Board. This one really stood out to me. It's basically involving buildings and access to buildings and providing certain stipulations for buildings to have individuals with disabilities have access, full access to them. So in my eyes, and I've been fortunate enough to become employed with the Disability Support Services on campus. I was a van driver, and I contributed to Section 502 by picking up individuals with disabilities to and from classes. Also, in my undergraduate studies, I took a course, KP 367, Adaptive Physical Education, and one of the requirements of the course was to evaluate a building on campus. We chose the field house. Unfortunately, it did not abide to a lot of the rules and with the checklist of what we had. But fortunately, they're making new accommodations and new renovations on the field house, which will be ready for next semester. Just making it a lot more wide open, a lot more space, including elevators, including handrails, including handicap accessible parking spots, and also automatic doors. A few I can think of off the top of my head. So they can enjoy whatever is being held in the field house at their convenience. Moving on to Section 503, employers with federal contracts or subcontracts. This clearly states it requires affirmative action and prohibits employment discrimination by federal government contractors, subcontractors with contracts of more than $10,000. Section 504, federal agencies and federal funded programs. Quote, no otherwise qualified individual with disabilities in the United States shall solely by reason of his or her disability be excluded from the participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance or under any program or activity conducted by the executive agency or by the United States Postal Service. Moving on to Section 508, this really pertains to 21st century and the life we live in now in society, electronic and information technology. This establishes requirements for electronic and information technology developed, maintained, procured, and used by the federal government. So basically inclusion, for example, a system that provides output only in audio format may not be accessible to people who are deaf or hard of hearing. Some of the shaping factors in which created the Rehabilitation Act in 1973 is the fact that millions of Americans have one or more physical and/or mental disabilities, and the number of Americans with such disabilities is increasing. And individuals with disabilities constitute one of the most disadvantaged groups in society. Facilitating factors to empower individuals with disabilities to maximize employment, economic self-sufficiency, independence and inclusion, and integration in society. This policy can fall under both the medical model and social model in my perspective. So it is the policy of the United States that all programs, projects, and activities receiving assistance from this Act shall be carried out in a manner consistent with the principle of respect for individuals' dignity, personal responsibility, self-determination, and pursuit of meaningful careers, based on informed choice and of individual disabilities. So based on their diagnosis, this Act does just that. It requires accommodations. Also, as a social model, as I mentioned in section 503, I believe it was, the one with buildings and making accommodations for buildings. Again, it's a social aspect in which they might not be able to climb a set of stairs without special accommodations. Ethical model shaping statute. It's much like the ADAAA. It's consequentialism. Who is receiving benefits from this Act? Principalism. No harm done for beneficiaries. The government has a duty to protect, and ethical societies do not discriminate. Intended consequences. A few of them I came up with: to provide employment and opportunity to those with disabilities. It allows for inclusion in society for those with disabilities. It allows individuals to access buildings to perform daily functions: elevators, ramps, automatic doors, handrails, etc., like I mentioned. An unintended consequence I could think of, the major one, is it kind of designates positions in the workforce for these individuals with disabilities, kind of sets boundaries and limits them, especially so in big organizations such as supermarkets. It really kind of doesn't give them leadership roles and any chance to kind of succeed and to go further on in their career. So why address by disability explicit policy? It's all opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. It gives individuals a sense of accomplishment. They get to be in the workplace with their peers, with their co-workers, with in society, with the general population as well. Interacting, it's a great way and great act. It's a great way for them to be involved and to get them involved. It allows them to make a living on their own with less volunteer work. That's all I have for the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. I hope you learned a little bit about it, and thanks for listening to my voice for 8+ minutes. And I say it under 10 minutes. Alright. Thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing what you guys have in store. Thank you.